What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. I finished 200 paid drafts so far this summer, so today we're going to take a look at my most rostered wide receivers, talk about why I've drafted them so much, and if my opinion has changed on them at all. All of these are from 12-team leagues, so the average amount you'll roster a player is 8%. So if I've taken someone on 16% of my leagues, then I've drafted them twice as often as average. All right. We'll start off with my most rostered wide receiver, by far the most controversial player in today's video. That is Marvin Harrison Jr. I know a lot of you absolutely hate him. So what I want to do in today's video is go over my best arguments for drafting him. And if you're not convinced after this video, just don't draft him. You should be in love with all your first 4 picks. The first 4 picks in drafts are the highest upside players and the players with the best chance of being league winners. So don't draft a player that you don't really like in the first 4 rounds, but I'm going to give a take as to why I have been drafting him. So last season, he gets drafted 4th overall by the Cardinals, and since he was one of the best wide receiver prospects we've seen in a while, he ends up going at like the 1-2 turn, depends on the platform, but somewhere in the general pick, like 12 to 15 in drafts. Looking back, it's pretty easy to see how that was a mistake, right? You can look back and say, like, he was still a rookie, right? I think it was the earliest we'd ever drafted a rookie wide receiver in like fantasy football history, and I don't think it was particularly close. But we should also try to remember how locked in a prospect he was. As a 20-year-old sophomore, he was 10th in yards per route run in the nation, even playing alongside JSN for a couple weeks, and then Emeka Egbuka as well. As a 21-year-old junior, he was 2nd in the country in yards per route run behind only Malik Neighbors, still playing alongside Emeka Egbuka. He was then taken top 4 in the NFL draft, which has only happened to 6 other wide receivers in the last 20 years. AJ Green, Amari Cooper, Sammy Watkins, Larry Fitzgerald, Calvin Johnson, and Braylon Edwards. Among that list of absolute studs, Marv had the 3rd most fantasy points in their rookie season, and 100% of those other wide receivers increased their production in year 2. In fact, the average rookie stat line among those other 6 wide receivers was a little over 56 receptions, 859 yards, and 5.6 receiving touchdowns. Want to know what their average year 2 stat line was? 80 receptions, nearly 1,200 yards, 8.8 touchdowns. So again, in the last 20 years, only 6 other wide receivers have been drafted as early as Marvin Harrison Jr. in the NFL draft. Only 2 had a better rookie season than Marv. 100% of them increased their production into year 2, and they gained an average of over 23 receptions, 336 yards, and 3.2 receiving touchdowns. Give that same sort of boost to Marvin Harrison Jr. He can finish as a top 5 wide receiver this season. I think the general consensus was that he was like bad as a rookie, but that's just not true. Again, he didn't perform that much differently than you would have expected given the production of other top 4 picks at the position. And the underlying stats are really good. Like, he wasn't AJ Brown, right? It wasn't peak AJ Brown. He was better than AJ Brown as a rookie, but he wasn't peak AJ Brown in year 1. But he showed an extremely strong route tree. He showed that he has a diverse route tree. He can run successful routes no matter what you tell him to do. He also cleared the 72nd percentile versus man, press, and zone coverage. And to be clear, we don't typically see wide receivers peak when they're 22-year-old rookies. Marv just turned 23 a week ago. Pretty strong chance, nearly a 100% chance he's going to take a big step forward this season. Now, I get the take that Kyler is overrated, great in fantasy at times, but as an NFL quarterback, highly overrated. He could be holding Marv back from an elite season. But look at the Cardinals depth chart. I'd be worried if he was playing alongside like multiple high caliber wide receivers with poor quarterback play, right? And I want to make it seem like, Kyler's a horrible quarterback. There are so many wide receivers this season that would dream of playing with Kyler. They'd be like, you know what? You think Kyler's bad? I might be catching passes from like Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shuck, right? Like, there's some bad quarterbacks this season. Kyler's overrated, but he's not one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. And again, look at the depth chart. Zay Jones is apparently outplaying Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch. So that should give you a pretty clear indication of how talented the group is behind him. It's just Marv and McBride out there, and no team has better weather to deal with than the Cardinals. Most of the time, this doesn't matter that much because a lot of teams are going to be in a general bucket. But when we look at the extremes, we look at teams that are going to be playing in like 10 bad weather games or teams that are going to be playing in 0 bad weather games all season, it does matter. They get 12 dome games this season, so you know those are obviously perfect weather conditions. Among the 4 other games they'll play in the fantasy season, all that we care about, 2 of them are in San Fran and Tampa Bay. Those are going to be great weather spots, meaning they only have 2 games all season where there's even a possibility they might be slightly inconvenienced by weather. And one of them is at the Bengals championship weekend, who have a train wreck of a defense. The Bengals might have the worst defense, definitely going to be a bottom 5 defense in the NFL. I can promise you that game is going to have a total north of 50, might have a total north of 55 points. Marv is going to be one of the highest ceiling wide receivers you can have in that week. Now, he goes a little bit earlier on Underdog because it's 3 wide receiver and people want that correlation, right? You're not too concerned about that week 17 correlation in a redraft league, just trying to draft the best team. But teams that draft, Chase Higgins, Chase Brown, like to follow that up with McBride and Marv. So he goes a little bit earlier on Underdog because of that. But industry-wide ADP, 40th overall, that's the early to mid 4th round. In my opinion, this is the exact type of player, the exact archetype of player that you want to be taking in that round, a near certainty that the production goes way up, and he has every opportunity to be a league winner this season, and costing a 4th round pick. You can get him as your wide receiver 2, even going heavy at running back early on. If he was your 1, you probably drafted an elite quarterback, an elite tight end, an elite running back, and he's got the upside to be a top 5 wide receiver this season. So I think in the 4th round, it just makes so much sense to grab him. Another early round wide receiver I've drafted a lot of is Mike Evans. I've drafted him on 14% of my team, so not quite double the field. Marv was at 25%. If you're wondering, again, my most rostered wide receiver. But yeah, Mike Evans, 14% rostered, average pick of 37th overall. That's, the early 4th round, 3-4 turn. Mike Evans, at least 1,000 receiving yards in 11 straight seasons, coming off his most yards per route run of his career. So there's no evidence that we've seen a decline right now. We shouldn't be predicting him to fall off a cliff this season. It's probably going to happen soon. I would guess it happens either next year or the year after, but all the reports out of camp have been super positive that he hasn't taken a step back, that he has been great and especially dominant in the red zone. We know that's a big game or a big part of the game for Mike Evans. And unfortunately for the Bucs, they already have probably the most injured wide receiver room in the league right now, a year after maybe also being the most injured wide receiver room in the league. Chris Godwin, not healthy yet. I'd imagine he opens on the pup, probably misses definitely the first 4, but first 5 or 6 weeks of the season. Jalen McMillan also suffered a severe neck sprain, so that's going to hold him out. People are saying probably past the week 9 bye, so probably week 10 before we see him. So we're going to see only Evans and Egbuka to start the season healthy. And while we obviously love Egbuka, like Evans is now set up to absolutely smash to start the season. I also think it's like super valuable in like a classic FFA build, right? Like we like to target rookies. I love drafting rookies. We think we can build strong enough teams to survive early in the season while the rookies are kind of still getting their footing. And when they start to break out in the second half of the year, we have super teams, right? Like that's just the teams I like. I also like taking risks, right? You guys know I'm not exactly risk averse. So I like taking a shot on suspended players because you're getting the discount if you can win in the weeks they're suspended. Well, now all of a sudden you already have these wins racked up and now you're getting a player back who's going to, be way more valuable than what it took to get them. So I like taking risks on rookies and suspended players. When you do that, you're at risk early in the season, right? Because you've got guys who are not playing. You've got guys who we don't know the role yet. And so you might start off slower, but not if you draft Mike Evans. He's going to start the season super hot. He's probably going to be, I haven't done obviously week 1 through 4 projections yet, but my guess would be he's going to be projected as a top 10 wide receiver in probably all of the first 4 weeks of the season. So if you want to draft players like Terry McLaurin, Ted McMillan, Travis Hunter, Jordan Addison, Brandon Ayuk, Rashid Rice, you want to draft running backs like Achane, Hampton, Travion, Harvey, Mixon, all these guys have a mixture of injuries, rookies, holdouts, suspension, all these things that might hurt you to start the year, you want them, go after Mike Evans because he is going to provide you a really nice boost over what it took to get him early on. Again, some of these guys might start slower, but if you can rack up those wins, it can be really beneficial to your team. I can promise you, he's going to project really well over the first month of the season. I think week 1, they're at the Falcons. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure they're out the Falcons week 1. And my goodness, he's probably going to have 150 yards and a touchdown in that game. Third, Odunze. I've drafted him on 15%, almost double the field there. Average pick of 61st overall. That's the 5-6 turn. Again, obviously all these drafts are from Underdog. There's no platform where I'm going to draft over 200 redraft leagues, right? I'm not crazy. So in redraft, all these players, I have the exact same take. I like all of them in redraft. Best ball, it doesn't really matter. But ADP wise, if you want Odunze, you're not taking him at the 5-6 turn redraft league. You're taking him on average, I think it's 77th overall, mid-7th round. So that's generally the range where he goes in redraft league. We only have one preseason game to work with, but that's probably a good thing, right? If the Bears went out there and played their starters for like half of each preseason game, I bet you everyone is going 2 rounds earlier. Maybe not like DJ Moore, because DJ Moore goes, in the early rounds. He's not going to bump up to like a 2nd round pick. But all these guys, proportionally for where you're drafting him, would jump up. And there's a possibility, absolutely, that Odunze would jump from a 7th round pick to a 4th or a 5th round pick if we actually got to see them play in the preseason. So nice to have. We had talked about this maybe a week ago in a video where it was like, we've seen speculation from some beat reporters, people who've watched practices that, they're not 100% convinced that Caleb Williams is good or is developing in the system. And so we haven't known. And again, that's why the ADPs are later. We haven't 100% known is like, if Ben Johnson's going to come in there, we know the play calling is going to get better, but is Caleb like so bad that it's not going to matter and that he's going to kind of hold things back? Because again, the reporting has been kind of mixed as far as that's concerned. Caleb looked terrible as a rookie. And so even like if you look at like the offense, like the underlying metrics, everything was really bad for Caleb. And so we weren't sure if like he's a bust or was it just all the coaching that was terrible. Personally, I've kind of been of that stance that like the coaching was so bad, there was nothing he could have done, and that Ben Johnson's going to really unlock this ceiling. And that's why I'm overweight on everyone from Chicago. It's not just from Odunze, but Odunze is the one I'm most overweight on. But yeah, it's kind of similar reasonings, I guess, as to why I'm overweight on Marvin Harrison Jr. I just think that people really, they jump off players too early. It's like it's kind of the same thing with like JSN. JSN had a tough rookie season with literally the exact same coaching that Odunze had last year. Sometimes the coaching is just bad. Sometimes it just takes a year for guys to break out. But these are incredibly talented players. And Odunze is a better prospect. Marv's a much better prospect than JSN was. Like, sometimes it just takes them a year to kind of get going. I think that's going to be the case with Odunze. And I also think, kind of going back to the preseason, what we saw from the very early or very limited, I guess, snaps for this first team offense in the preseason is that the play calling is just so much better. I mean, in the preseason, they're not even showing you anything, right? They're not going out there running trick plays in the preseason. They're kind of using vanilla plays. And even the vanilla plays were so much better than what we saw last season. Like, it's just night and day how they're able to scheme players open. And what do we want? We want players who can get open on their own, matched with coaches who will scheme them open. Again, Odunze wasn't as good as Mar, but he was still great as a rookie. Showed elite success rate across the entire route tree, cleared the 70th percentile versus man, 85th percentile success rate, or cleared the 85th, I think it was 87th percentile success rate versus press coverage. Both incredibly impressive as rookies. The issue was the offense was terrible. It truly did not matter what Odunze was doing. 48% of Rome Odunze's open air yards last season were deemed uncatchable. So when he was open, 48% of those air yards were impossible for him to catch. He ran 144 routes where there was no target on the play. So the vast majority of the time that Odunze is out there on the field, it did not matter if he was wide open. Nothing mattered. He could have done nothing to earn a reception. That's just not going to be the case this season. Again, we had concern that it's like, is Caleb just really bad? I think that's thrown away at this point. Like, I've seen enough in the preseason. We've barely seen anything, but for them to go out there and just so clearly everyone is schemed open at a way higher degree. In the preseason where everything's vanilla, this offense is going to be so much better than last year. I believe in the underlying just like talent of Odunze. I think the coaching staff is going to put him in position to succeed, whereas last year, everyone was put in position to fail. So love him this season. Love that we didn't see anything, as far as production. I mean, I don't even think he had a reception in that preseason game. Love it. Don't give him an opportunity to see his ADP really rise. Hopefully he just doesn't even play in the third week of the preseason. Next up, Michael Pittman Jr. I've drafted him on 20% of my teams. Average pick 95th overall. That is the late 8th round. Again, that's a 3 wide receiver format. In regular redraft leagues, 2 wide receiver, he goes in the 10th round. Kind of want to use this as an opportunity to just talk about the Colts wide receiver room. We're going to do that with another team a little bit later on. Because I don't know. I think there's a lot of moving parts here. And we just got word, obviously, Daniel Jones named the starter for week 1. First off, Coach Speak Index has Shane Steichen as one of the least reliable coaches in the league when it comes to talking about the depth chart, meaning that, like, don't believe him, basically. Like, when he speaks about depth chart things, he lies most of the time. So you have to, take what he's saying with a grain of salt. Daniel Jones is definitely going to start week 1. He wasn't lying about that. But the whole comment about like, oh, I don't want him to have a short leash on that, it's probably a lie. Like, and don't even think about it like, oh, Coach Speak Index could be wrong on this one. Like, think about it from a staff perspective. They know, this coaching staff knows, if they underperform again this season, all of them are getting fired. So if Daniel Jones goes out there and he stinks, you're going to see Anthony Richardson quickly. They're not going to be like, well, let's see, let's get him, 8-9 weeks. We can start off with like 3 or 4 wins. Like, they have to make playoffs. Like, they just kind of have to. They have to win this season or else this coaching staff is going to be fired. So it's not going to be a long leash for Daniel Jones. So know that. As for the pass catchers, it is kind of tough to know how to value them at times. You've got Alec Pierce and A.D. Mitchell probably rotating in that wide receiver 3 job. I will say, for some reason, there's no connection between A.D. Mitchell and Anthony Richardson, but there is between A.D. Mitchell and Daniel Jones. So if you are an A.D. Mitchell fan, you really want Daniel Jones starting because that connection has been much stronger, whereas there's a great connection between Alec Pierce and Anthony Richardson. So kind of a weird split as far as that's concerned. But those two are probably going to rotate through as like the third most valuable wide receiver, used a lot in like deep plays. They're going to be the guys that really stretch the field. Then you've got Pittman, Downs, more as your traditional top 2 wide receivers. You've got Tyler Warren probably not coming off the field unless he's absolutely gassed. He's going to play like 95% of the snaps from week 1. So we know the roles. And so if Daniel Jones is even half competent, this is like a really talented group of wide receivers. Is it the best wide receiver room in the NFL? Of course not. But there's a lot more talent than I think people understand. You take this grouping and you put it on a lot of different teams with like really good quarterback play, they go off and they do not go this late in drafts. And so talent-wise, if all these guys are going to go in the 9th round or later, again, you don't need Daniel Jones to be that good of a passer for these guys to crush their ADP. Downs is the first drafted, but he's only the 48th wide receiver off boards. Pittman goes 49th among wide receivers. Pierce, A.D. Mitchell, they don't get drafted in redraft leagues. I've personally latched on to Pittman this season because I think people kind of forget Downs is a very trendy guy. To be on some of the underlying stats for him are really good, but I think people just forget. Like, Pittman was an awesome wide receiver heading into last season, always shattered this current ADP, but he broke his back to start the year, right? Like, he had a broken back, horrific quarterback play, and he was still 52nd points per game. So when I draft him as like the wide receiver 49 or 50, in my mind, I'm like, okay, even if he breaks his back again and quarterback play stinks, he probably returns value at this spot. Do I want the 50th wide receiver? No. But in taking him here, I know that leading into last season, he was always outperforming this ADP. Then he breaks his back and gets bad quarterback play. If he doesn't break his back, and if the quarterback play just gets a little bit better, whether that is through Daniel Jones, whether that is through Anthony Richardson in like the second half of the season, no matter what, if it can just improve a little bit, I think he's probably going to shatter his ADP. Do I think that any of these pass catchers, at least at wide receiver, are going to be a true league winner? Probably not. But do I think anyone in round 10 has a high chance of being a true league winner? Probably not. So it's okay that Pittman's probably not going to be a top 10 wide receiver, but I absolutely think he could be a wide receiver 2 this season. And to get him as a wide receiver 5, that's obviously a great value. Next up, Rashid Shaheed. I've drafted him on 23.3% of my teams. So this is a guy that right behind Marvin Harrison Jr. as my second most rostered wide receiver. Average pick of 108 overall. That's the 9-10 turn. Again, he goes a little bit later in redraft, 11th round. Still actually don't know who the quarterback's going to be. I think we know in every single other situation right now, but we don't know yet for the Saints. But like with the Colts, I don't think it's going to be one guy. So no matter who they say the starting quarterback is for the Saints, it's not like that's the starting quarterback all season, and it's not like the quarterback play is going to be good. Now, I still like Olave. I think Olave is a great wide receiver, and if the quarterback play was really good, he could honestly be a wide receiver 1 in fantasy. But the ADP gap probably should not be 4 rounds difference between these two. Over his last 17 games played, Shaheed has 54 receptions, 883 yards, 7 touchdowns. That is a stat line that is absolutely worthy of flex production. Like, he has been, over his last year of playing, a wide receiver you could play in the flex spot. And his quarterback play, again, is going to be bad this year, but it's not like it's been good over his last 17 games. We also know with 100% certainty, he's locked into 2 wide receiver sets, so the snaps are there. We know that Kellen Moore as well has been much more creative at layup routes for both Olave and Shaheed. They basically got none last season. They already got, I think it was like 2 each in their preseason game. We also have beat reporters saying that, Shaheed has looked better at times than Olave. I think the layup route part is really important. Like, Shaheed has consistently been a player where you're like, best ball only, right? Like, that's the classic saying. And I've kind of been, guilty of saying that at times, being like, he's much better in best ball. And he is, but I don't want that to make it seem like you can't draft him in a redraft league, because the cost is really, really low, 11th round. And if I'm thinking he can be a flex play right away and you're drafting him as a wide receiver 5 here, that's extreme value. Like, even if you don't think he can be a top 10 wide receiver, if you draft him as a wide receiver 5 and instantly play him in the flex and he produces there, that is going to help you make the playoffs. And again, the layup routes help that. Historically, Shaheed has been a player where it's deep shots, right? It's like he's got this insane yards per reception, but he has to hit on a deep ball to matter. When you get these layup routes, and that's basically just like, screen passes, drag routes, just getting them the ball really close to the line of scrimmage and just getting the ball into their hands, let them do something after the catch. If you just mix in a few of those each week, it can limit the games where you have 1 catch on 5 targets for 20 yards, right? Because now you kind of add in these free routes. You're at least expecting, 2, 3, 4 receptions as a baseline every week. And then the spikes from there can be 7 or 8 reception games. When you don't have those, it just leads to way more variance, and that's why at times people don't feel as confident in him in the flex spot. But I think this season, he's going to get more of those free routes, more of those free targets, going to be on the field a ton, and it's another situation where people are expecting the quarterback play to be horrible. So where you're drafting him is under the expectation the quarterback play is bad. So if it is, he probably returns value. If it's not, well, the odds are it's better, right? And so then he can actually be something you're using every week, and that would be really valuable again in the 11th round. Next up, Keenan Allen. Drafted him on 19% of my teams, average pick of 196th overall. That's the mid-17th round. Current ADP is closer to round 11, so I've, of course, been drafting him less than when he was free in drafts, right? I mean, I was telling everyone, like, you had to draft him in round 17, round 18 when he was free. Finally signs. Now, of course, his value is much higher. Keenan's the player I was alluding to, where I kind of just want to talk about this entire wide receiver room because there have been so many moving parts all summer, and I don't think it's that easy to break down. The easiest part of it is Ladd. Ladd is the clear wide receiver 1, still the alpha on this offense, not as valuable as he was before when he was going in that same range of like Ladd and A.J. Brown. I don't think you can take him there anymore, but I think the 3rd round of redraft leagues, I'm not worried about the target share at that point. It's definitely a lower expectation than we had to start the summer, but in the 3rd round, I'm totally fine taking Ladd this season. He is better in full PPR than half PPR. After Ladd, I do think Keenan Allen is probably the 2nd most valuable Chargers wide receiver, just because the connections there. This isn't some random free agent joining the team late. He's been with the team for his entire career, nearly his entire career. He's played with Justin Herbert. So they already have a connection. He's going to step right in and probably be ahead of these rookies as far as chemistry. Definitely going to be ahead of these rookies as far as chemistry with Herbert. Also, I was clear all summer. I mentioned it in so many videos that like I don't think he was cooked last year. I think he had plenty of gas left in the tank. Maybe you disagree. He's 33 years old. Maybe like another year he's cooked now. But when you look at him run routes last season, he was not cooked. Like he was totally fine. He ran some really good routes. And he's kind of the player where it doesn't matter as much when you've got like a pure X wide receiver, or you've got like a pure just athletic wide receiver that's winning off athleticism on the outside. When they start to drop off, it's a problem, right? Now you're not running away from people. Now you're not mossing people. Now you're not getting any separation. It becomes bad really quickly. Keenan Allen is fantastic against zone coverage, fantastic in the middle of the field. You don't need to be some like high-end athlete. So those players age a lot better. They can play longer into their career. They can play when they're injured at times because it's more about being smart, finding coverages, identifying where there's going to be an open spot, and just getting there, right? Just getting open in zone. And when you also have the chemistry with the quarterback, I just think there's a lot of upside there. If Ladd got hurt, I mean, he would probably be like a wide receiver. I don't want to say 1, but maybe a low-end 1, wide receiver 2. He'd be someone that you're starting every single week, regardless of what happens with these rookies. So I think he is the second most valuable player for wide receiver on the team. Tough part is the rookies, right? I think Quentin's probably a bust, not a rookie, but like I think you probably throw him to the side and say like they tried their best. They gave him every opportunity. I just don't think it's going to happen for Quentin Johnson. So my gut says that Trey Harris has the next best chance of like being that third best wide receiver on this team. But Keandre Lambert-Smith has been absolutely balling this summer. He seems like a huge hit for them in round 5. He wasn't like some high-end prospect. And I think Trey Harris probably is the better prospect and definitely was the one you should have drafted first if you were the Chargers. But it's pretty hard to deny that like Keandre Lambert-Smith has been better than Trey Harris this summer. Will that continue into the season? I don't know, but he's looked really good this summer. I personally took him in Dynasty. He's actually available on free agency at the end, so I ended up dropping someone. I think it was Yoshi. I think I dropped Yoshi Voss for him, but I dropped someone for him because honestly, I just believe in the talent. You watch Keandre Lambert-Smith play, and he just looks really good. And of course, this is an offense I just want players on because it's a good offense with a good quarterback, good coaching staff, all that stuff. For redraft leagues, though, again, most of you play in redraft leagues, I feel like the play is basically Ladd in round 3, Keenan in that general like 11 to 13 range, kind of depends on, I don't know, your roster setup, like kind of depends on everything there, but 11 to 13, that general range. And then I don't know if I'm drafting any of the rest of them, at least in like a standard, like half PPR, 12-team league, 2 wide receiver, 1 flex, and like 5 or 6 bench spots. You probably just don't have to go after any of these rookies. If you expand to 14 teams, you get to like 7, 8 bench spots. Now we're talking where maybe I want to gain exposure to these guys. One of Trey Harris or Keandre Lambert-Smith is probably going to, go out there in week 1, have a decent snap share. And if they look good, they might be the top waiver wire ad. So I get it if you want to use kind of your last wide receiver pick on whichever one you think is good. Maybe I'm also wrong. Maybe Keenan Allen is cooked. And, again, 33 years old. That's not exactly young for a wide receiver. Again, I've kind of went over the points where I don't think that's the case. But if you disagree, again, I'm totally fine drafting one of Trey Harris or Keandre Lambert-Smith later on in your draft, whoever you feel good about. Again, Trey Harris was a great prospect. Like, I really do think both of these two can have great careers in the NFL, which is why it's so difficult to kind of figure out what to do with this wide receiver room. I probably won't draft either, and I'll probably say, okay, we'll watch in week 1. And if I'm wrong, one of them has like an 80% snap share, then we'll go after that wide receiver. But my guess is that Quentin, Keandre, Trey, they're all going to kind of rotate early on, and they'll just see which one of them breaks out. So I still like Ladd. I still like Keenan. Those are probably the 2 I'd go after, but it's okay to draft one of the other ones later on. Just not Quentin. Don't draft Quentin Johnson. So that is it. That is the top wide receivers I've been drafting. We'll do the same thing for running back next week. Tomorrow, we're going to do the big video, news. You got to be subscribed. You got to watch that video. It's the most important video of the week. Kind of in the videos, in between those, we're kind of talking about players I like, players I don't like. But the Saturday video is super important. If you have a draft this weekend, you have to watch the Saturday video. It is the biggest news from every team over the last week. got to be subscribed, got to watch that video. If you have a draft this weekend, good luck. Hope you crush it. If you want a little bit more help in crushing it, you can see my rankings on my website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. And if you have an in-person draft, please check out the principal rankings. They got a big upgrade this season. They're very, very detailed, very, very formatted well for in-person drafts, whereas they weren't as much before. Please print those off if you have an in-person draft. That'll do it for this one, though. Again, leave a like, subscribe if you're new. I'll be back tomorrow to go over the most important news over the last week for every team.